Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Mary Needs an A to Get into PA School, Wolbachia edition. So what is Wolbachia, you may ask? Well, according to Bergey's manual, Wolbachia are gram-negative bacteria that can be either small rods or coccoid. These bacteria were discovered in the 1920s but were not popular until the 1970s when scientists found that they could alter the reproductive capabilities of various species. Wolbachia's main ecological role today is, however, how it forms various symbiotic relationships such as parasitism, mutualism, and even obligate mutualism. So, for example, nematodes now rely on Wolbachia for reproduction and survival, and studies have found that when Wolbachia is removed from these worms, it can either result in premature death or they can become sterile. So, in arthropods, Wolbachia will actually affect its host reproductive capabilities to increase its own numbers. Some of the methods used to achieve this include cytoplasmic incompatibility, parthenogenesis, feminization, and male killing. If you're interested in learning about each of these methods, please feel free to Google them. So by forming these symbiotic relationships, Wolbachia obtains its nutrients from its host, and is probably the reason why it's so hard for scientists to isolate it outside of any host. In regards to such special proteins to help with survival, the only thing that scientists have been able to really find or talk about in papers that I found were something called a temporary bacteriophage called WO that is related to horizontal gene transfer, but that's about all that was written. Maybe since it's so hard to isolate outside of its host, there's not really much exact studying into its structure, but I'm just speculating at that point. So finally, the big question. Why should I care? Well, you may or may not have heard of dengue virus, pronounced dengue, but it's a viral infection that causes dengue fever, which appears with flu-like symptoms, but can potentially progress to severe dengue, which can be fatal. This virus is transmitted through female mosquitoes, and according to the World Health Organization, about half of the world's population is now at risk. If you look at this picture right here, you can see that all of the orange are actually countries or areas where dengue has been reported. So this is a big part of the population. So, I lost where I was. So, how can Wolbachia help? So let's take a look at this quick animation, or my bad drawings. So, right here we can see, we're going to call these mosquitoes, and the green dots represent Wolbachia infected mosquitoes. So let's say this is a male mosquito, and this is a female mosquito. Since the Wolbachia is infected in the male and not in the female, their offspring are actually non-viable. However, when an uninfected male and an infected female make babies, their offspring are viable and have Wolbachia inside of them. And also, when you have both infected mosquitoes mating, their offspring are also infected with Wolbachia and viable. So over time, you're going to have an increased population in the mosquitoes that carry this Wolbachia infection. So what does that have to do with dengue? So what scientists found is that when they actually infected dengue into Wolbachia infected mosquitoes, the dengue did not grow. Probably because it didn't like its environment, and Wolbachia was not letting it grow. And there's a word for that I forgot. Anyways, so that's actually a good thing. Because having these Wolbachia infected mosquitoes is actually very inexpensive. Scientists started growing them in greenhouses and then released them into Australian populations. That's supposed to be Australia. And so what they found is that by flooding the mosquito population with these Wolbachia infected mosquitoes, the transmission of dengue actually decreased significantly. And this is really big because sustaining these mosquitoes are basically self-sustaining, and the process is virtually inexpensive. So right now, there's plans to have Wolbachia mosquitoes released in all these other populations if allowed by the government, obviously. And so the fact that it's so inexpensive and self-sustaining is really big when it comes, because they have found that it can also be used for Zika and West Nile virus that are coming into play now. That's not how you spell virus. In around 2016 and so on and so forth. So that's how Wolbachia can help, and that's why it's such a good bacteria. Thank you for joining me. If you'd like to see more, I don't have any.